Hey, Brian.
Hi, Brad.
You should be able to share your screen from below. I have some things to go over once you're done. So
Well, if you want to go over them first, you can.
you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll give it another minute or so, and we'll get started.
And so, are you going out of town?
Yeah, it's my 20th wedding anniversary.
Where are you going?
Caprock Canyon, Texas. Think west.
Sounds like.
Anyway, all I know, it's a 5-hour drive. What's that?
Is that near Marfa?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, sort of. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Susie. Susie says congratulations. Yeah, they just added rain into the forecast, so hopefully we don't get rained on. We like to hike all around there, so we'll see.
Isn't that normal for you to make plans to go somewhere and get rained out?
Exactly. Which means all y'all are going to lose power over the weekend. I thought that exact thing when I was living through the hailstorm last night. I'm like, yeah, that just goes to show you. My dog walker is now in charge of my house now for the weekend, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, we know some good roofers if you need.
Yeah. Yeah, I recommended Doc out this morning to one of our folks, actually. Oh, there's your counter surfer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute. Is that you, Brian? Okay. All right, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I am gonna go first, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Brian. He's got a presentation today on Google My Business. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about the market. So especially as it relates to buyers and just the inability to get things across the goal line here. And I know I've talked about this before, but it's been a couple of weeks, and as my slide suggests, it's a hot market, but there's hot tempers out there too amongst everybody, agents, your buyer clients. And so I just kind of wanted to talk through what's going on, some tips and tricks, and anybody that has any insight would love for you to chime in. So, the current state is obviously too many buyers, too few homes, right? And we also have realtors that have never worked in this kind of market. So back in 08, 09, we were saying the same thing for the opposite reason. It was pretty gloom and doom. But when it comes to the market that we're in, again, there are some folks that just aren't used to this. We're looking at obviously a lot of over ask offers. Appraisal waivers are pretty much a standard, but the issue is that if you have an FHA or a VA loan, you can't sign it. And so there's no written guarantee that from a VA or FHA buyer that says, I'm going to pay the difference. And so that's very, very frustrating. So that really eliminates, in some cases, anybody that has that kind of loan. We are getting below value appraisals. What a shocker. If someone's paying 40 grand above ask, that's going to happen. And then a lack of willingness to negotiate or even respond from sellers' agents, right? And so people that typically cannot manage this process well are going to be hard to get a hold of, right? So what can you do for you? So be prepared to put your battle armor on. I'm not suggesting that you be nasty or aggressive, but if there was ever a time in your real estate career where you're going to be asked to step up to the plate tenfold, it's now, right? I mean, you've got to anticipate what's going on. And so hence what I said here, be prepared and be knowledgeable about the process, about everything. Know your contracts. If you know contracts, you're going to know strategy. All right. And then most of all, know your client strategy. So there are two kinds of real estate agents out there, in my opinion. Those that always want to be right, and those that want to do the right thing. And, I think we have an office full of folks that want to do the right thing. And so, however, you're going to run up against folks on the other side of the transaction that, just want to be right. They want to beat their chest about how much value they have for their client, and they want to bully you, right? But remember who you represent. And so knowing your client strategy is key, because we know mechanically what it takes to pretty much win the deal, but that might not align with your client strategy. So if you represent a buyer, they understand that they have to probably offer over ask to get the deal, but is that really their strategy? Is it just about winning, or is it about really getting the home that they want? And then again, have that 10-minute conversation with your client regarding what reality really is. So before this all kind of came to a head, the natural progression of a conversation with a buyer was what I call the honeymoon period. It's, oh, we're ready to buy a home. We just can't wait. We're going to improve our lives, and we got pre-approved, and we can buy up to $400,000. And the process was somewhat structured and contained. But to just do that and write down, I want a 3-bedroom, a 2-bath, a 2-car garage, or 3,000 square foot home, that's extra. What you need to do is really make sure that you're preparing your clients for what they're about to walk into, okay, and what reality is. And so what is the new reality for buyers? So you need to tell them your offer will likely not be accepted on the first try, right? You will likely have to look at a lot of homes. And that is difficult because there aren't a lot of homes out there. But it's going to be very discouraging if you don't prep them ahead of time to the fact that this is likely not going to be it. I mean, you're going to be competing with a whole bunch of other folks, and this is the reality right now. So let's talk about what plan B is, because your offer is not likely going to be accepted. You will likely be in a multiple offer situation. You will likely be asked to sign an appraisal waiver. And so lots of documents to sign in a real estate transaction. Do not fool them into thinking that this is just one more paper to sign. This has huge implications financially, depending on which box they check. Okay, but this is a new document that really was kind of used sporadically, but now it's used all the time. So the ability for y'all and your client to understand the document is critical. right? And then, be frank. If you have an FHA or VA loan, you are already at a disadvantage. I hate to say that, but it's going to be rare unless you get a seller that has a soft spot for a military buyer, that's going to get through, just because, again, the competition is so fierce out there. And the main reason why this is a disadvantage is because your client can't sign an appraisal waiver. And so there has to be something else that guarantees, to the degree that they can make up the difference if the appraisal happens to come in less. You will likely not get a response to your offer immediately because the seller will see so many. So a lot of times sellers' agents will be caught off guard and not have thought ahead to either put in the listing or communicate somehow, look, we're going to get a lot of offers on this. We're not going to look at all of them until X date. And the buyer and the buyer's agent thinks, well, I just submitted this offer. Why haven't I heard anything? Well, it's because of that. It's because there is just such a lot of competition out there. So they need to be prepared to that fact. And if they don't receive an offer, so the buyer has to think in their mind, okay, if this is the new reality, how long can I wait before I need to move on? Because there aren't a lot of homes out there, and if they can't be told in a reasonable amount of time that their offer is either accepted or not, they need to move on. And so just prepare your client for that conversation. And you will absolutely need a list of other homes as a backup. Okay. And then lastly, you can, wherever I say you, that means the buyer, you can win if your agent does a few things right. All right, so I'm going to get to that in a second. So what is the reality for sellers? Agents are often caught off guard by just the sheer volume of showings and offers and calls. It's overwhelming. Okay, so sellers agents need to be prepared. Reality is multiple offers. Doesn't matter what price point. And then it's easy to get lured into actually believing the home is worth more than it is and more than it should be worth. Okay, and this is primarily driven by the sellers themselves. And again, getting back to, is it important to do what's right or do the right thing? And then another reality is lower than asking price appraisals. This is going to be an inevitability. Just because the homes are being priced aggressively as it is, people are offering more. It is only natural with a lack of comps that appraisals are going to come in lower than ask. And then buyer agent bullies, cough, cough. Cough, cough is in there to remind me to tell you a story about something that happened to one of our agents over the weekend. One of our agents represented a seller. And so she had the listing. And the buyer's agent, because he had his battle armor on and he, wanted to prove his worth to his clients, thought it would be a good idea to bully the agent into getting his offer accepted. So he actually said to our agent, look, just tell me what I need to do here. If I need to go up $5,000 on my offer to get this accepted, just cough twice. That is a no-no. That isn't so, but that is happening out there. And so couldn't prove it because it was his word against hers, but it ended fine. But I mean, someone actually thought that was okay to say that. And so, in the frenzy and the fervor of selling a home, if you're the listing agent, my gosh, don't get caught up in being sucked into, that kind of negotiation. That's a quick way to a lawsuit. All right, so what are some ways to win offers from if you're the buyer agent? So look, it is all about money, right? So, when there are, the definition of a multiple offer 6 months ago was two or three. And so buyer's agents thought it would be a good idea for the buyer to write a letter to the seller. And I've talked about that a lot, and how, if you represent the seller, that's not a good idea. But it used to be a lever of distinction. And that is just not the case anymore. I mean, when you have 15 or more offers on one home, the letter doesn't mean anything. It's all about the strength of the offer and how much money the seller is going to net. So one of the biggies is the buyer could offer to pay the seller's title policy. So what is that? 1.25% of the sales price? That's a big deal. So that is one way to just don't wait for that negotiation to happen. Just offer it as part of the offer if your buyer can do it. Because otherwise, when you think about it, the only alternative is to offer more in the sales price. And that might not be possible. So these are some alternatives for that. So pay the seller's title policy, offer over asking price, goes without saying, sign an appraisal waiver, offer to pay for the home warranty, forfeit part of the buyer's commission, last resort. But I think I've mentioned this one before. If you have a client that has been down this road 10 or 15 times, and this is the deciding factor, it might be worth it. And also depending on the buyer's frustration level. Offer a lease back to the seller. Offer more earnest money. And so that's important, because if something does go south and the buyer defaults, the seller is entitled to that much more money. Put more cash down. So that balances out the loan, which means that the loan is less risky. And so that is sometimes more attractive. All right, offer a shorter option period and pay way more of an option fee. And so not just 150, 250 bucks, I'm talking 500, 600, 700 bucks, if not more. Because that's, again, it's all about the money. So that's cash right to the seller. Okay. And then use a conventional loan, and I'm not saying don't take clients without, that have an FHA or VA loan. But if the buyer has a choice, have them go with a conventional loan. All right, that's going to be what's going to get the deal across the finish line. Okay, so now after all this, it's going to be hold your breath and pray, right? Because you're going to be in line with a handful of other folks that have similar, if not stronger, offers. You can only do so much. But I guess my point is, don't wait for the seller to come back to you and say, can your buyer pick up the title policy? Can the buyer pay this? Can the buyer pay that? If you ask the buyer those questions up front, just make that part of the natural offer that you present all the time. Okay, and it will increase the odds of you getting the offer. All right, so seller agent tips. Educate your seller ahead of time about the pros and cons with various kinds of financing, so they know where the risks are. Okay, again, VA versus FHA versus conventional. Ask to see proof of cash if buyer signs an appraisal waiver. That's actually a good tactic for a buyer's agent. So if they sign an appraisal waiver and they have to come up with some kind of extra cash, it would make your offer stronger if the buyer provided proof of funds. But as we're talking about the seller, same goes for this. Ask to see a proof of cash if the buyer signs an appraisal waiver. Because think about it, the buyer is going to, if they've been through this process and are beat down, they're going to try every trick in the book just to get accepted, only to just kind of work out the details later. And so if you represent the seller, you want to make sure that if you're about to take their home off the market, that this buyer is viable and everything that they say is true. All right. Determine if you and the seller should preset a date to review all offers. If so, put that in the MLS. We've got to stop the feeding frenzy and disorganization of the process. So this is if you represent the seller. So, the seller has probably never been through this process in this market ever. And so if you want to lessen the dysfunction around it, because there's such a thing in life as having too much choice. And, all of a sudden the seller's going to be looking at 17 different offers and not know which one to accept. And all of a sudden more are coming in and more are coming in and more are coming in. It's just easier to establish what the boundaries are. And that will also eliminate the buyer's agent from calling you or texting you or emailing you about what's the status of my offer. If you already kind of put it out there and put a reasonable date, and so if the home goes on the market on a Monday, you're going to get offers. And so maybe by Wednesday at 5, you'll determine what, who's being accepted. I mean, I wouldn't drag it out, just because the buyer has to know whether to, stay put or move on. All right. Educate the seller that the more above asking price an offer is, the more likely it won't appraise. And then what? Right. So it's easy for the seller to say, well, tough, the seller or the buyer is going to have to come out of pocket. But the reality is that if it's a couple of $1,000s off, that's one thing. If it's $30,000, $40,000 off, that's another. Because remember, you've taken the house off the market. And so if the home doesn't appraise, then what happens then? Has the seller even thought about that? Is he willing to decrease the price? Is he willing to come up halfway? I mean, what happens at that point? And this is another reason why an FHA loan isn't attractive, because the appraisal sticks with that home for 6 months. So the next FHA buyer that comes forward is stuck with that appraisal. Okay, so that is a tip for the seller's agent. And then, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just do the right thing. I know this may seem like this is your one chance in your entire life to make an extra $10,000 off of this asset, but you got to look at the big picture. What's the strength of the buyer's offer? Do I just kind of want to get out of this house and move on? And am I trying to get the most amount of money, or, am I trying to sell the home for really what it's worth? Because as I've mentioned before, all these folks that are paying more than it's worth is going to have to go and sell this home eventually. And then what happens? They're not going to get an accurate valuation. So, it might be easier in exchange for in a smooth transaction to take what the home is worth, because it's going to appraise that amount, than go through jump through all these hoops and make everyone's life difficult. All right. So yeah, I think that was it. And then I had one, I think that was a mistake. Okay. So any questions, concerns, or comments about what I just went over with regards to the buyers? I know it's tough out there. Yes, sir.
I would just say if you're a buyer's agent and you're in a 4 or 5 day option period, have a number of inspectors already lined up to go, because you can't wait to the last day to have that inspection done. So you've got to make sure that there's inspectors out there that have a calendar cleared for you guys. And also in regards to getting proof of funds, that they have available cash. Don't wait for the listing agent or the seller to ask you to send that across. Send it across with your offer. You're sending a pre-approval letter, send that bank statement or whatever you have across with your offer. Speed up the process and make it as easy as possible for the listing agent and the seller. Yep,
good point. And just got a question from Amir. How's the new build situation? I mean, it's not much better. It's cost of lumber, cost of cement is affecting prices, and there's a waiting list for most new builds. It's equally as tight out there.
I'll say something about that. And then another thing, as far as the new builds go, I don't know if all of them are doing this, but I know with DR Horton, they're putting themselves in a multiple offer situation. So it may as well be a pre-existing home. Yeah, no. And another thing, and I don't know how many builders are doing this so far, but Lennar has cut their commission down to 1%.
Yep. Yep, I was going to mention that too. One of our agents experienced that this week. So the lower and this is Lennar specifically, so I'm not going to talk about DR and anybody else, but Lennar specifically, the lower the price of the home, the less commission you're going to get.
Another thing, as far as you had mentioned, offer a lease back. More and more people, it doesn't matter the price point of the home, but more and more people are offering complimentary lease backs. And I'm not talking a few days or a couple of weeks, I'm talking up to 2 months.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Good to know. Good to hear. All right. So Brian, do you want to take it away with everything about Google My Business?
Okay. Can people see this?
Not just yet. Not just yet.
Okay, hold on a second. Share. Let me pull this up.
Okay.
Let me minimize it. Let me get down here.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me do a slideshow here. From the beginning. Okay, how come it's not?
Sometimes it's delayed. You could in the bottom there where you see the little TV monitor icon, go ahead and click that in your slide within PowerPoint.
Oh, there we are.
There we go. Yep.
You're right. It was delayed. Okay. I wish I could make this smaller so I could see people. And everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk. Brad asked me to talk about Google My Business today. And so I've got a little short presentation, and then I'll open it up to questions. Melinda and I have been doing have had a Google My Business page for probably about 15 months now. And I would say we're probably pretty hardcore at it right now, because this is primarily where we get our business now, is from Google My Business. So what is Google My Business? A little bit more about us, but what is Google My Business? It is a free tool to promote your business, and it can be any business. You can be running a flower shop, a bakery, be a real estate agent, be an attorney, but it's meant to get you on the Google search engine and on their maps. And with or without a Google account, you can set up a profile. So you don't need to have a Gmail account, although that helps, but go ahead and set up a Google My Business page. And why do I think so highly about this? Well, I'll get to that in a little while. But how do you get a Google business page? Just search Google My Business, and it's going to take you right to the page that you need to be on. And you either sign in with your Gmail account or you sign up for an account. It's free, and it is one of the easiest things that you can possibly do to drive business to you. So once you get an account, and they may have changed the way they get it, they're going to ask to verify your business. So when I first signed up for this, they sent me a postcard in about 10 days so that I could go back online and verify that I was actually who I was. So they asked for my business location. They asked what business I was in, contact information, and then they sent out a postcard allowing me to get to the backside of the Google business page. So this is a shot of what I'm showing you. And I'll show you our page live, but this is the back end of our home page. And as you can see, we've had 534 views. This is in the last month, 437 searches, and over 3,000 bits of activity, whether that's looking at photos, clicking on a website link, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're showing up in just about everybody's search, whether or not they take the opportunity to contact us. That's another question. But I can attest that I can see lead generation and referrals coming to us just from our business page. So as you go through this business page, it's going to start, it's very, very simple to fill out. And this is the information about Melinda and I. We are realtors, and we are real estate agents, and a real estate agency, and a real estate consultant. Keywords that Google is providing you. Our service areas are Frisco, Far North Dallas, McKinney, and Denton. Just recently, I changed. I used to have the RE/MAX location, 407 West El Dorado, as the location, and that would, from that vantage point, anytime anybody did a search, there would be a little map icon that would show up, pinpointing exactly where the business was. But now it's a map feature, and it basically shows the entire area that we service. So a little bit about services. Again, we're putting in as much information as we possibly can. The thing you need to understand about Google is they're only going to like you and love you and work with you is if you give them as much information as possible. They are a data collection agency. That's what they want. And so if you do sign up for this, spend the time, go through everything that they're asking you for, and fill it out completely. So last month, we took a photo of a house out in Princeton. We've got this buyer actually found us on the internet. And when anybody says, oh, we found you on the internet, we know it came from our Google business page. So this is a photo that we took of their home in Princeton. It got 58 views. And the arrow is pointing to a statement that says 90% of customers are more likely to visit a business that has added photos to their Google listing. We have almost 1,200 photos on our business page, which got over 13,000 views in the last month. And it is driving business. Melinda and I can attest to that. We do very little in the way of paying for leads. Most of this is free off of the Google business page. Let me go to the next slide here. So what has this led to? This has led to a home buyer lead from last December that closed on a $335,000 home in March. This has led to 2 recent relocating buyer leads above $400,000. And just recently, this past Tuesday, it led to a website hit and a listing lead in Little Elm. The only thing that we're primarily doing is we're taking photos and we're adding lots of them. And I know you guys as real estate agents, you're out visiting homes, you're looking at new builder communities, you're driving around, you know, taking pictures, or maybe you've even never thought about taking a picture. Take a picture. Google has an app. It's on my phone. I take a picture, it's automatically loaded up to our site. So it's a tool that's free, easy, and fun. So I would highly, highly recommend getting a business page, or if you have one, continuing to work it. Don't ignore it. Fill out everything completely and then just add photos, photos, photos.
So Brian, based on your location, let's say someone typed in realtors in Frisco or realtors in Little Elm or wherever, yours would pop up in that map functionality?
It does, Brad, but I think because my IP address is, Google has that already. Whenever I type that in, it doesn't all the time come up. So you can see there's the Remax office. Brad's got his Remax office there. But let me just show you our page, okay?
We still have your, we're still looking at your slide presentation.
Uh-oh, let me get out of here. Are you still looking at it?
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So now,
Let me
no
go
one
back.
share. Yeah, you'll need to reshare.
I should be better at this. Melinda slap me. I'm on Zoom all the time. Okay.
There we go.
My connection is really slow. So I'm hoping that's coming up.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So in the time that I did this slide presentation, I think on Tuesday, where we had just a little over 3,000 hits, we're now up to 6.24. Over 6,000 hits now we're getting. I can show you the photos that we've got here. And
see, so see where it says create a post, add photo. So that's, I mean, think of this as another version of like your Facebook page to some degree. I think it's actually easier to navigate, and it's going to net, hits to this. And so because Google is everyone's primary search engine, that's kind of where, why this is so successful. So if you just make this part of your business plan, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, come in and either post something or post a photo. And we all know that from the new builder icon in the MLS, you can easily throw up a photo of a new build and get traction. They in that application specifically, I know I've talked about posting on Facebook, which you can do, but you're only bound by however many friends you have. I mean, here it's worldwide. So this, to Brian's point, it's a bit further reaching.
Yeah, with Facebook, it's pretty static. Like Brad said, you have to invite people. They have to know you have a Facebook page. This Google is driving people to your business. So I would highly recommend that you guys, whatever you're doing out there, go ahead and get a business page. I wish my computer was working better right now, because I'd really like to.
So do they still require a physical address?
No, they don't, and I'll show you. There's so many things to this.
That's a huge change. I mean, I can already tell that this has changed since like I set one up 4 years ago, and man,
Yeah.
this is really, they've done a lot for independent, businesses like that.
So I no longer have a physical location. I just changed that the other day, and I'll probably change it again in a month or so.
Yeah.
But if you can see this area that's marked out here of Dallas Fort Worth, those are all service areas that I had plugged into Google My Business. So now when somebody pulls up the map feature, this is what they're going to see.
Interesting. And we had a question: do you delete old photos and replace them with new ones, or do you just keep them in there forever.
Just keep adding them.
So Brian,
there's
I
no-
always like to tell the story about Brian. So when I first met Brian 5 years ago, he and his wife Melinda had done videos on YouTube on various things, and you still do. But out of the blue one day, you got a lead from someone that found your YouTube video. And that's part of the reason why I talk a lot about that, because you just never know where it's going to come from. And so you're smart, Brian, because you're in the two most highly trafficked sites, and of course they're owned by the same company, but both YouTube and Google. I mean, if it's free, why not?
Yeah, and Google My Business and YouTube, they're the biggest search engines out there.
Yeah.
Google and YouTube. YouTube is a search engine. You
Right.
can find anything you want on it. And these couple photos that you see here, Lexington, photo of the side of a house, exterior of a house, those are things that I just took the other day, yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And we also do some posts. Brad, I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi must be really slow,
That's all right.
or it just can't handle the number of people online. But I've also done some posts, and if you have an event, if you have something that you want to offer to people, a free e-guide or something like that,
Yeah.
go ahead and post that on the business page.
Yeah.
I've posted some videos on here. Anything that you can add to Google to feed it, it's going to put you up higher in their search engine. So if you're paying for SEO, you might want to think about spending a little time getting your business page together and just start those photos that you got sitting in your phone of that new home that you visited yesterday. Just start posting them.
Yeah. So when I think about offers and freebies, I think about our vendor book, because everyone's looking for a plumber or electrician. And I think about a list of coming soons. I think about a list of open houses, anything that you would want people to go to your website for. This is awesome, because it's worldwide.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay. Well,
So, and just one last thing, here's how
Yeah.
customers search for our business: through discovery, through our brand, and direct searching for our name. So most of it's coming from people who are searching for a realtor.
wow. That's pretty staggering. 97%. So that's what they call organic search, which means that you didn't spend a dime to get them to you.
Exactly.
All right.
So I am going to end. If I
Yeah.
can.
So any questions for Brian?
Too overwhelming.
Well, I'm sure that between Brian and myself, we can help you get this set up. But anything in Google, it's pretty intuitive, like Brian said. You don't have to go very far to find it, and set it up. And like everything, if you don't get to all the setup immediately, just don't worry. Just do a little bit each day. But overall, it's pretty intuitive to set up. All right, awesome. Well, thank you for doing that. That's very helpful. There have clearly been some changes since the last time I did this, which makes it very easy for solo entrepreneurs like us to take advantage of that stuff. So that's awesome. So next week will be a traditional office meeting. We'll review April's numbers. The week after, I'm going to do a session on land. And that was a suggestion from one of our agents, Arsha. So we're going to go through those contracts and just kind of review some tips and tricks on just selling raw land. But otherwise, I think that's a wrap for today. And you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here next Thursday. All right, thanks, guys.